Ovdje su mi analize, da kažem, iz bolnice, evo ovdje recimo, evo, digno, znači limfoma, TCG.
So the normal levels of uranium in our body is supposed to be 0.005, and you have 2.22. It's incredible.
Ono što je zabrinjavajuće, da se broj obolelih pacijenata sa onkološkim bolestima 100% uveća.
Recite da se mi trudimo, ali znači koliko uslova za to imamo.
We have not been able to find any connection between exposure to depleted uranium and go-for illness.
Imamo još vremena da budemo razumni za dobrobit pre svega nas samih, naših budućih pokolenja.
Mi njih ne možemo da izlečimo, ali da im u neku ruku produžimo život.
What is the true cost of war? Today in Serbia, Kosovo, and the Balkans, ordinary people continue to struggle with the legacy of NATO's military intervention, in particular its use of depleted uranium ammunition. Many claim these weapons continue to kill long after they were used on the battlefield. This is a story of suffering that has far too long gone without recognition. The 1980s was a period of economic and political unrest in Yugoslavia, a large country that was located in Eastern Europe. This led to the rise of ethnic tensions and eventual breakup of the country along the borders of 4 of its previous republics: Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croatia, Macedonia, Slovenia, and Serbia-Montenegro, known for a while as the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. But the region remained unstable for years to come. By the late 1990s, an armed conflict had erupted between what had been the autonomous province of Kosovo under the former Yugoslavia and Serbia-Montenegro. In 1999, NATO began airstrikes in the region to put an end to the war and force the troops of the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, led by President Slobodan Milosevic, out of the autonomous province. Much of NATO's ammunition contained depleted uranium, a toxic heavy metal so dense that it can penetrate enemy armored vehicles. Yet its consequences on the populations and ecosystems nearby has been disputed for years.
Ja sam Ksenija Tadić iz Beograda. Sad ću u oktobru 46 godina. Znači ja sam jedina za sada preživela od melanoma koji sam zaradila zbog bombardovanja, jer imam kod mene je pronađeno 500 puta više osiromašenog uranijuma.
April 29, 1999 is a day Ksenija Tadić will never forget. The Federal Republic of Yugoslavia was in a state of emergency as the conflict with Kosovo intensified, drawing in NATO. At 7:45 p.m., air raid sirens filled the night sky across the capital Belgrade. Days earlier, NATO had struck Serbia's radio and television headquarters, killing 16 people. Now, everyone was bracing for another attack, especially Ksenija Tadić, who lived right behind the Yugoslav Ministry of Defense building at the time.
Pa to je bilo 99. godine, sad baš bukvalno kada su gađali generalštab. Ja sam jedno vreme bila tu u Birčaninovoj i gledala televiziju. Bukvalno. Bukvalno smo slušali, znaš, ono kako su poginuli oni iz televizije i sve to. Ali uopšte nisam se ja nadala da, eto tako, da se i meni nešto dešava.
Following the strike on the Ministry of Defense, Ksenija and her family escaped to her grandmother's house in the south of the country, closer to the border with Kosovo. But being in the mountains, they thought they were safe, and they were safe from the bombings, but not from what came after.
25 years on, and NATO's bombing of the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia is still viewed very differently by all sides. While Kosovo considers the 78-day campaign as the prevention of ethnic cleansing and genocide of Kosovo Albanians, Serbia considers themselves victims of provoked NATO aggression.
In March of 2000, NATO confirmed to the United Nations that approximately 31,000 rounds of ammunition released from their A-10 fighter jets were used on Serbia and Kosovo between March 24th and June 10th, 1999. However, much of that ammunition contained depleted uranium, classified as a Group 1 carcinogenic by some medical associations, including the International Agency for Research on Cancer. Many years later, Ksenia, by now a mother of two, found a black mark on her back.
To je bilo kao mladiš. I mene je to svrbelo. Mi smo stvarno mislili da je mladiš. I to je prokrvarilo. Doktor je uzeo odmah onaj histopatološki nalaz. I oni su rekli da je to maligno. Maligni melanom.
Since Ksenia's first diagnosis, 16 other disruptive ailments have developed in her body, she says.
Iskaču mi vratni pršljinovi, znači kriv vrat, kriva kičma, izlizane čašice od kukova, pritisak varira. Znači nekad mi se čak i približi, bude 10-20 razlika između gornjeg i donjeg, pa puls mi bude oko 112, 120, znači katastrofa. Znači srce mi nije na mestu. Znači, svašta.
In Serbia's southern city of Niš, 28-year-old Lazar is driving to the hospital for another round of cancer treatment.
Inače, na primjer, počeo sam da primećujem neke nuspojave od terapije. Kao što, recimo, ne znam, ljušti se koža, koče mi se prsti, to mi se nije dešavalo. A od one prve, pa ima tamo Vinkristin, to se zove jedan citostatik. I od njega, recimo, kad zatvoriš oči, ne možeš da hodaš pravo, nego ideš levo-desno. To je, sad kažu da se to sve vremeno vraća, ali to je, recimo, ono što sam sad primetio.
Twice a month, Lazar drives from his village in Kosovo to Niš in Serbia for chemotherapy. He was only 3 at the time of the bombings, growing up in a village just outside Kosovo's capital, Pristina. Now, years later, he believes he is a victim of them.
Zamarao sam se brzo, znojenja nekad ne baš objašnjena. Znači, do tada sve, da kažem, analize su bile dobre, nisu ukazivale na kancer dok nije stigla, znači, biopsija. Nikako nisam očekivao to, iako su lekari, recimo, očekivali zbog analize i iskustva koje imaju u radu.
Lazar did not initially connect his diagnosis to his exposure to depleted uranium as a child until he did some more research.
Čitao po internetu da, recimo, da su neki vojnici žali, recimo, koji su bili u KFOR-u na Kosovu, koji su živjeli, da posle toga imaju maligna oboljenja. Da je generalno veći procenat malignih oboljenja, mnogo veći na Kosovu nego nekim drugim mestima u Evropi, da se pretpostavlja da je zbog oboljenja.
The Kosovo force, KFOR, is a NATO-led international peacekeeping force with a large Italian contingency. They were deployed to Kosovo in June of 1999 to deter renewed hostilities and ensure public safety and order. However, many believe this came at a price.
Potpuno promeni pogled na život, planove koje ste imali se menjaju. Znači, ne možete više da planirate ništa dok se ne izlečite.
We decided to visit Lazar's village of Gračanica, making the more than 3-hour drive from Niš across the border and into Kosovo, where KFOR troops are still active today. In 2008, Kosovo declared its independence from the Serbian Republic. Historically, the region has long been connected to Serbia. However, more than 90% of the population is ethnically Albanian. While Kosovo's sovereignty is not recognized by Belgrade and many other countries, it does receive a lot of support from the West. The capital, Pristina, is a colorful mix of ethnicities due to its history as an important trading center in the Balkans and beyond. Yet Gračanica is mostly ethnic Serb, like 62-year-old Miodrag Androvic, a tractor mechanic who has been living here his entire life.
Pa ja kad sam rođen, imalo je problema, ali politika čini svoje. Mi tu ništa ne možemo. Narod ko pita narod? Padale bombe. Pa bombe su padale ovde iznad Gračanice. Nikad nisam izlazio sa Kosova. Sve i za vreme bombardovanja i posle bombardovanja. Samo jedino ovo sad što idem u Niš. Sad ležim po 5 dana u bolnicu
The Yugoslav Red Cross registered close to 250,000 mostly Serb refugees who fled Kosovo following the war. Miodrag and his family decided to stay, but at what cost?
2018. kad sam dobio ovo, vrat mi bio teko. Prvo to je bili simptomi. Biopsija mi je rađena. Otkrili su limfom Hodgkin. Ja sam najviše imao u vrat. Ovde imam ispod pazuha, na prepone. Imam ovde, ja mislim kod levi bubreg, tu mi je najveći. On je negde 35 milimetara.
Despite repeated and lengthy treatments, Miodrag's cancer continues to return.
2018. prvi put kad sam otišao u Niš. Međutim, kad sam otišao u Niš, doktor kad me pregledao i pitam ga, doktore, radim takav i takav posao, praljavština, garež i sve, da nije od toga. Ne, kaže Andrejić, to je posljedica od NATO bombardovanja. Osiromašeni uranijum.
Miodrag believes many others in his village who stayed also suffered from the same consequences.
Sad smo sa sina nabrajali, pa ja mislim ima negde oko 7-8 njih što su oboleli, ima neki su već umrli.
NATO adamantly denies any connection between the depleted uranium ammunition used by its fighter jets and adverse health issues. In 2001, NATO immediately established an ad hoc committee on depleted uranium, inclusive of 50 nations and 5 international organizations.
Based on the data today, no link has been established between depleted uranium and any forms of cancer. A number of nations have sent teams to the region to analyze the environment for health risk in areas of operation. To date, based on preliminary findings, there has been no indication of increased level of radioactivity at any of the sites tested.
Many other international organizations also deny any link. A 2000 report by the United Nations Environment Program and International Atomic Energy Agency also found no convincing evidence of a connection, a position also shared by the World Health Organization. The United States, the only NATO ally to use the depleted uranium weapons during the 78-day air campaign, insists the munitions pose no health threat.
We have studied depleted uranium at considerable length over the years, and we have not been able to find any connection between exposure to depleted uranium on the one hand and the constellation of illnesses or symptoms included in Gulf War illness.
This is a position they still hold today, and along with their British counterparts are even sending depleted uranium anti-tank rounds to Ukraine. While other environmental or personal habits such as smoking must be considered, the fact remains that the number of those falling ill in areas where the heavy metal was used is rising.
The increased number of those with cancer, however, is not solely reserved for the mountainous regions and plains of countries that made up the former Yugoslavia. Some 3,000 kilometers away from here, over the course of 2 conflicts, Allied forces are reported to have fired upwards of 1 million depleted uranium rounds in Iraq.
That is what Serbia's leading toxicologist also believes. Dr. Radomir Kovacevic explains how the radioactivity created when the depleted uranium ammunition strikes the hard shell of a tank can lead to birth defects.
Piroforan, samozapaljen i prilikom udara u tvrdu barijeru, spontano se pali i dolazi do temperature od blizu 3000 stepenijata. A onda se stvara aerosol u vazduhu sa kapima tečnosti i onda to se raspršuje svuda. Za mene su najopasnije posljedice na genetičkom materijalu, što se reflektuje na potomstvo.
Dr. Kovacevic has been speaking out about the potential dangers of exposure to depleted uranium for years. In 1999, he formed an ad hoc center to help victims exposed to the bombings in Serbia. And 2 years later, he became the head medical doctor for the team, working on the decontamination of bombed areas.
Kada dođe do ekspozicije, izlaganja, to znači kontaminacija organizma. Bez obzira na put unoska, da li je inhalacija, da li je ingestija, da li je to konzumacija hrane, vode, biljnog, životinskog porekla. Potiskuju kalcijum iz skeleta i onda se vezuje upravo uran na ta mesta i onda trajno, faktički, kontaminira organizam i onda može da proizvede bilo koji efekat.
He adds that this can lead to a multitude of illnesses, from cancers to cardiovascular diseases, even to genetic mutations.
Kasnije, kada je obolelo u Italiji, ti koji su odlazili na odsustvo, neko 25, kada su našli na potomcima tih vojnika, na deci, 25 dece sa teškim anomalijama. Sada to je već došlo, otvorili su oni i dobili su brojne presude. Italijani su sada digli uzbunu.
These other avenues led Tartaglia to Niš and the law firm of Sarjan Aleksic. For the last 5 years, Sarjan Aleksic and lawyer Brankica Popovic have been preparing a class action lawsuit from purported victims against the NATO alliance. For Aleksic, it's personal. He is driven by the belief that his mother, friends, and relatives all died of cancer resulting from exposure to depleted uranium.
Ja trenutno zastupam 3.500 građana Republike Srbije, Kosova i Metohije, koji su oboleli od kancera kao posljedica osiromašenog uranijuma sa svom medicinskom dokumentacijom. Trenutno imamo preko 35 predmeta na sudu u Beogradu, Nišu i u drugim gradovima.
He also argues that the environmental damage caused by the bombings amounts to ecocide. The team in Niš is backed up by Tartaglia and has many successes in Rome's civil court. However, whereas Tartaglia sued the state of Italy as the employer of the K4 soldiers, Aleksic is suing NATO through the Serbian courts on behalf of the citizens.
Pre 2 godine smo pokrenuli prvu tužbu, smo podneli. Pokrenuli smo postupak pred Višim sudom u Beogradu. Dostavili smo sve materijalne dokaze, sva veštačenja, sve presude iz Italije, sve presude Europskog suda za zaštitu ljudskih prava, jer pre svega je povređeno pravo na život, koje je osnovno ljudsko pravo, koje je članom 1, pre svega statuta zaštitu ljudskih prava u Strasburu, predviđeno našim ustavom, član 25, koji garantuje pravo na život svih naših građana.
While no verdict has yet been granted, in March 2022, NATO replied to the Serbian court's request to submit its observations of the complaint. They cite the full immunity from jurisdiction and enforcement granted by the Transit Agreement for Peace Support Organizations, signed in 2005 and 2006, and thereby argue that NATO was not properly served. But Aleksic considers this a small victory in itself.
Što je za nas velika stvar i početak sudskog postupka, NATO pakt je izjavio da ima pravni imunitet, što znači da NATO pakt poštuje sud.
This has not deterred the lawyers. 2 months after NATO's reply, Aleksic received further support from Italy. To avoid any possible bias, medical samples from 2 Serbian victims, Colonel Dragan Stojic, who was stationed along the front line for months, and civilian Ksenija Tadic in Belgrade, had been sent to Dr. Rita Celli in Turin, Italy. The results that came back surprised them all.
Iz biopsije utvrđujemo prisustvo teških metala i osiromašenog uranijuma. Specifičnost je kod svih da preko 21 teški metal koji se nalazi u granati, koji se nalazi čestice u topu cevi A-10 aviona koji su upotrebljeni.
Znači, na taj način može da se napravi poređenje, s tim što kod Dragana Stojčića je utvrđeno 21 metal, kod nje 23.
Back in Belgrade, we went through the report with Ksenia, and what we read was concerning.
On a whole, these lab results have found a connection between depleted uranium exposure in the Balkans and negative health effects, even though these world bodies, the United Nations, the World Health Organizations, and the United Kingdom say there's no connection. This is just incredible.
Yes. Verovatno kriju da nas ne bi isplatili, verujte mi, jer ja kažem opet i da dobijem tu naknadu, ja kažem koje pare mogu meni da vrate moje zdravlje. I mi bukvalno kao da ne postojimo. Nažalost. Pa verovatno je i politika umešana.
Professor Dr. Rada Trajkovic knows politics is involved. As a politician in the Serbian government and the president of the European Movement of Serbs in Kosovo, Trajkovic says the Serbian government doesn't want to press the issue.
Zavisi o odnosu države prema zapadu. Kada su ti odnosi nekada bolji i kada hoćeš da napraviš bolje odnose, onda se ućutiš, kriješ, ne govoriš podatke. Mi zvanično zaista nemamo podatke, osim individualnih izjava kolega lekara, posebno onih koji se bave onkologijom, a njihove izjave vrlo su vezane za nešto što podrazumeva njihovo političko opredeljenje. Pa ako su više desno ili više anti-NATO, oni će zaista da govore o užasnim podacima, a ako ste više pro-NATO, onda ćete ili da prećudite ili da ne govorite.
The government in Pristina is also silent on the issue, says lawyer Brankica Popovic, herself a Serb from Kosovo, governed by an Albanian majority government.
S obzirom na to da su bombardovanje, znamo koji su zapravo uzroci, da su oni na neki način dobili takozvanu njihovu državu Kosovo, da njih su priznale skoro pa sve države Evrope i da oni neće sasvim sigurno ići protiv nekoga koji im je omogućio državu.
Yet that state is still very fragile despite 15 years of independence, and nowhere is that more apparent than here in the divided city of Mitrovica. The bridge over the Ibar River, patrolled continuously by KFOR, provides a physical separation between two independent municipalities, South Mitrovica, administered by Pristina, and North Mitrovica, run by a local Belgrade-backed Serbian political party.
This city represents the still very present ethnic tensions here in Kosovo, more than 2 months after NATO's bombing of the region to stop what they consider to be Serbian aggression. For this, ethnic Albanians have always been grateful to the alliance. Therefore, despite our countless requests, we were unable to find anyone from that side to speak publicly about any potential negative health effects connected to the depleted uranium used by NATO.
Because of these divided politics, it is difficult to formulate official numbers of those potentially affected by exposure to depleted uranium. And more consequentially, it has created a parallel healthcare system which impacts Kosovo's overall medical services. The increase in cancer cases is adding to the challenges. The Clinical Hospital Center in North Mitrovica is funded by Serbia and operates separately from the Kosovo healthcare system. But it is one of the few public hospitals in all of Kosovo treating cancer patients.
Ono što je zabrinjavajuće da se broj obolelih pacijenata sa onkološkim bolestima 100% uvećao. Nekada smo imali samo onkološki dispanzer, sada imamo onkološku službu, odnosno onkološko odeljenje na kome se primaju terapije. Zabrinjava zato što oboljevaju i deca, i mladi, i stari. I nažalost, vi znate kako se maligna bolest uvek završava gotovo smrtnim ishodom.
The head nurse shows us around their temporary oncology department.
Jako tužno što sve više mladih ljudi, nažalost i dece, Mi živimo na području koje je bilo bombardovano, tako da je veliki procenat u porastu su te maligne bolesti. Sada koja vrsta, ne mogu vam reći šta prednjači. Kod žene uglavnom karcinomi dojke, karcinomi materice, karcinomi debelog creva, svega ima.
She then takes us to what used to be the oncology department before it was used for COVID-19 patients. Cracked floors and broken down equipment show the desperate need for resources.
Imamo problem i sa davanjem te terapije, pre svega sa nabavkom citostatika. Vrlo često su nam pacijenti prinuđeni da kupuju sopstvenih sredstava citostatike, a da onda nakon toga imaju problem da isti taj lek prenesu, to jest donesu do područja Mitrovice zbog, da kažem, administrativnog prelaza i zbog trenutne situacije.
This is why many patients will travel to Niš in southern Serbia for treatment.
I šteta je što ne postoji jedinstvo, barem u ovoj situaciji, da svako od njih koji je oboleo ima neku vrstu naknade štete, da li je to u vidu lečenja, da li je to materijalno, kako god. Šteta je što ne postoji jedinstvo.
Told you everything.
At this point, Alkasanya wants us to have access to the treatment she needs, the treatment she deserves.
Znači sve ligne žleze da ne bi one se širile po telu, jer one stalno menjaju mesta i šire se i nikad ne znate kad može da bude maligno. Ili metastaze. Sad da ne bi došlo do toga, zato treba da se vadi sve.
But Kasanya says she can't find anyone in the public healthcare system in Serbia that will operate on her.
I često mi govore kad odem na onkologiju, pa kao ako niste zadovoljni, pa idite privatno pa se operišite. Privatno da operišete Euromedik ili ne znam već ko to operiše ovde, ispod 10-20 hiljada nije. Jer ja imam ćerku, evo sad kreće u srednju školu. Ona tek sad puni 15 godina. Potrebna sam je. A i ne bi da umrem baš sa 46 godina.
Trudimo se da tim pacijentima pružimo podršku i maksimalno neki vid zdravstvene zaštite koji smo mi u mogućnosti. Dosta su jako teški uslovi, jako teškim uslovima i radimo i živimo.
Ono što je karakteristika vlasti i u Beogradu i u Prištini, da su ljudi nevažni i životi ljudi su nevažni. Važna je teritorija, pa i takva otrovana ili zatrovana kakva god. Bombe kada padaju, onda nemoguće je da nema posledica.
Taj slučaj trebao da bude opomena za sve ljude. Da eto, ako mi njih, kako da vam kažem, mi njih ne možemo da izlečimo, ali da im u neku ruku produžimo život. I za svaku porodicu će to sasvim sigurno da znači.
Naši građani nisu odgovorni. Znači, naši građani, bez obzira čak i oni koji su bili uključeni u vojne operacije, upotreba municije su siromaštva uranijuma protiv pre svega međunarodnog ratnog prava, protiv konvencija i povelje evropske povelje i povelje Ujedinjenih nacija. Imamo još vremena da budemo razumni za dobrobit pre svega nas samih, naših budućih pokolenja.
Na koga da budem ljud? Nema na koga da budem. Tako je i šta je, nema tu. Ja ne mogu ništa da promenim. Nažalost. Niko ne može ništa da promeni. Oni što, nažalost, možeju da promeniju, izgleda nemaju sluha za to i tako je to.
The debate surrounding the effects of depleted uranium and the true cost of war is far from over. There are many international laws protecting human rights, but without concrete, irrefutable evidence to tie depleted uranium to life-threatening diseases, these laws cannot be applied, leaving many with failing health without anywhere to turn. Scrutiny of the issue appears to be stalled, leaving it under-researched and therefore under-regulated, with the lives of many left on the line. At the same time, it is hard to accept that a powerful military alliance born of democratic, peace-oriented nations would knowingly harm populations. Perhaps Ukraine will prove the final testing ground, as NATO partners send depleted uranium ammunition to the front lines there, potentially jeopardizing far more than Russian warfare. Unfortunately, only time will tell.